The house had been empty for decades, its wooden frame groaning under the weight of time. When David first arrived, he thought the creaks were the settling of an old structure, the wind whispering through broken shutters, the occasional scurry of a mouse. But the scratching came later, and it was nothing like he'd ever heard before. It started quietly, almost polite, a faint tapping, like fingernails brushing against dry plaster. David was unpacking boxes in the living room, a faint scent of damp wood and mold lingering in the corners. He froze. The noise stopped. He shook his head, laughing at himself. "Old house," he muttered, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. That night, he slept with the lights on. Every time the wind pressed against the window, he imagined someone peering in. But the sound didn't come from outside. It came from inside, the walls themselves. He thought of rats, or perhaps squirrels that had made their way in through a hole in the roof. Yet the tapping never followed the pattern of an animal. It was too deliberate, too rhythmic. By the third night, the scratching had grown bolder. He was in the kitchen, boiling water for tea, when he heard it again, slow, deliberate, crawling along the wall behind him. He turned sharply, heart hammering, but there was nothing. Just peeling wallpaper, shadows stretching in the yellow light. "Maybe I'm imagining it," he whispered. But when he reached to pour the hot water, the wall itself shivered under his fingers, a vibration that didn't belong to the house. His skin prickled. Something moved behind the plaster. The following days blurred into a cycle of noise and fear. David began sleeping in short bursts, waking to the same relentless tapping at odd hours. He started keeping a notebook, jotting down the times and the patterns: 2:17 a.m., 3:03 a.m., 3:47 a.m. Every night it came, always the same rhythm, always closer. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, David traced the scratches with his fingers, mapping their path across the walls. He noticed the plaster was slightly warm under his touch, and tiny holes had appeared where none existed before, pinpricks that weren't there in the morning. He pressed his ear against the wall. His blood ran cold. He heard a faint, wet sliding sound, like something moving just beyond the wood, waiting. He tried to tell himself it was old pipes, rodents, the wind. But even the dog he'd rescued refused to enter the hall. It whimpered at the door, its fur bristling, eyes locked on the wall. And then came the whispering, so faint, so close to inaudible, that David wondered if he had finally lost his mind. "David." He jerked back. The voice was hollow, distant, yet unmistakably real. He turned on every light, shook the walls, called out, but there was nothing. Only the scratching continued, moving across the house like a predator pacing behind thin paper walls. David's nights became a torment. The creature, or whatever it was, learned the house. It adapted, appearing where he least expected it. He caught glimpses, a shadow that shouldn't be there, eyes that reflected the dim lamplight, a curling shape slipping just beyond the wall's edge. He began to talk to it, reasoning, begging, laughing at himself in his empty kitchen. "I don't want to hurt you. Just leave me alone." And it answered. Not in words, not yet. But the scratching paused when he spoke, resumed when he fell silent. He was learning, and it was learning too. By the end of the week, the walls were alive. Every night, David lay in bed, listening. Scratches, whispers, wet sliding sounds, subtle thumps, like claws moving just beneath the surface. He began hearing footsteps in the hall even when he was alone. Shadows shifted unnaturally. The house felt hungry. One night, David awoke to a cold breath on his neck. No wind, no open window, just the unmistakable presence of something staring, waiting in the darkness. The scratching had stopped. And for the first time, David felt what it was. It wasn't just in the walls. It was in the house, in the floors, in the air. It was everywhere. He wanted to run, but his feet refused. He wanted to scream, but no sound came. He pressed himself into the mattress, praying for sunrise. And as the first pale light of dawn filtered through the cracked shutters, he realized the house had him. And it wasn't finished. David didn't sleep that night. Or rather, He tried, lying in bed with the covers pulled tight over his ears, but the house had its own plans. The scratching had started hours ago, creeping along the walls like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, hungry. He had begun talking to it. Not out loud, exactly, but muttering, reasoning, pleading. I just moved here. I don't want trouble. I just want to live. His voice sounded foolish in the empty house, but the creature listened. It responded. That night, the tapping changed. The rhythm became urgent, almost impatient. David traced it along the walls with his fingers, following the invisible path as if it were leaving him a trail. The plaster was warmer now, pulsing slightly under his touch. The house smelled different, too, coppery, like something ancient and buried, like a grave disturbed. And then came the breathing. At first, he thought it was his own, rapid and shallow. But no. It was behind the walls. Low, wet, rasping. A sound that crawled into his chest and wrapped itself around his ribcage. David staggered back, eyes darting to every corner. Shadows flickered unnaturally in the lamplight, stretching, twitching, moving. He felt it before he saw it. A pressure in the air, like the room itself was leaning toward him, waiting. He ran to the hallway, but the floorboards groaned differently, heavier. Something was on the other side of the wall, pacing. And then, a faint thump, right behind him. David spun around. Nothing. Just the wall. Just the dark. He didn't want to look, but he couldn't help himself. Peeling back a strip of old wallpaper in the hallway, he glimpsed it, a shadow curling and writhing in impossible angles, a mass of black sinew that seemed to pulse like living smoke. Eyes. 1,000 pinprick eyes reflecting the dim light, staring directly at him. It hissed. Not words, but a sound that filled the hallway, vibrating through his skull. He stumbled backward, heart hammering, knocking over a chair. And then it moved, faster than anything human, sliding along the walls, stretching impossibly, disappearing into the ceiling. The house seemed to breathe with it. David tried to leave, but the door slammed shut before he could reach it. Windows rattled. The air grew thick, humid, oppressive. Whispers swirled around him, hundreds of them, all repeating one word, one name. David. David. He ran to the kitchen, grabbed a flashlight, and shone it into the corners. Shadows danced, twisting against the walls. The creature was everywhere and nowhere at once. He caught glimpses of claws, talons scraping under the floorboards, the wallpaper rippling as if alive. In desperation, he remembered the cellar. Perhaps he could trap it there. He ran down the narrow steps, the wooden stairs moaning beneath him. The smell hit first, damp earth, rot, and something foul yet ancient. The flashlight beam quivered as it revealed the cellar walls, thick with grime and cobwebs. Something shifted just beyond the light. He swung the beam. Nothing. Then it struck. A clawed hand burst through the plaster, long, thin, and impossibly jointed. It scratched the floor as if testing the wood, and David's scream echoed through the empty house. He slammed the door, backed against the wall, holding the flashlight like a weapon. But he knew it wasn't enough. The creature was not bound by walls. It could be in the wood, the air, the very shadows themselves. Hours passed like days. He dozed, never fully asleep, listening to every thump, every scratch, every whisper. And then he heard it, crawling beneath the floorboards, directly below his bed. He froze. It paused. And then a voice, hollow, dripping with something cold, whispered into the darkness. You can't leave. Not yet. David knew it was true. The house was alive. The creature had made it home. And he was its prisoner. By morning, the scratches had stopped. The house was silent, almost peaceful. But David didn't feel safe. He didn't feel anything except dread. He spent hours checking doors, windows, walls, everything intact, everything normal. Yet he knew it was only waiting. Watching. Hunger patient, eternal. He left a note on his desk, a message for anyone who might come after him. If you hear scratching in your walls, don't ignore it. Whatever lives there doesn't stay hidden forever. And as he turned to leave, He felt it, cold air brushing against his neck. He spun, but no one was there. Only shadows. Only walls. And the faintest whisper. David. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling tales. Comment below if you've ever experienced something strange. You never know what might be lurking in your own walls.